Today is Saturday, December 28th, 2024. The time right now is 4:44 a.m. Hopefully this records properly. I don't even really have my mic plugged in. I just have my phone. But I just woke up and still kind of half asleep. But I saw something and like in my dream, and I had very like a strong sort of wave of information kind of hit me, and I thought this was important to share. But last thing I remember is seeing like an oven, like a kitchen setup, but particularly the oven. And the thing that I sort of received is that the strangest sort of thing came to me, and it's like you can use anything as a divination tool, and then kind of like as a subtext kind of being like including this like oven, right? And waking up to that, right, and being sort of in this half asleep state, I thought it was so strange. And usually when that happens, in that sort of theta state, I get kind of this influx of information, and this time it was about how it may seem silly, yes, but the reason you can use anything as a divination tool, right, is because you're the divination tool. You don't need all this, all the decks, all the like tarot decks or oracle decks, pendulums, whatever else. You don't need all that. And it might be nice to have. You may want these things, but never think that you're limited to just having these specified tools in order to connect to the unseen, to yourself, to whatever it is that you believe and have faith in. Don't think that you're limited in any way. Whenever you ask for signs and symbols, whenever you ask for communication, again, based off of whatever you have faith in, whatever your beliefs are in, you will find the answers. You just have to be open to it. But again, you can't limit. Let's say you're someone who's super logical, right? And you can never see yourself working with the traditional sort of divination tools, right? Scrying, or again, the tarot deck, you will find answers in other ways. You will find them in books that you read, right? You will hear repeated the same word or the same phrase or the same sentiment repeated in the documentaries you watch or the movies that you watch or the songs that you listen to. Pay attention. I think that's the biggest thing that this existence asks of you, right? Is to just pay attention, just to be tuned in, just be aware. And so this was kind of the message that came through, is that you are the divination tool. You're the one that's doing all the decoding, the seeking. It doesn't really matter if you are, if you have the, again, like the traditional, the standard kind of tools or not. You'll never be ignored because you don't have these standard things, again, like these card decks or the crystal balls or whatever it is, right? You'll never be ignored because you don't have these things or because you don't want these things. If you are looking for answers, the answers will always try and find a way to get to you. I know something that is sort of related to this, and something that I've kind of felt for some time now, is when it comes to I guess what people would call deity work, right? Now, you may disregard what I have to say because I'm not someone who practices deity work in a traditional sense, right? But I think if you're hearing this and you feel something in your heart, and I think it's important that you know, or rather you hear what I have to say and you sort of just hear me out, right? And what I think of that and what I have felt for a while is that just as with divination and things, and you don't need all these tools, these fancy things, the same could be said for deity work, right? Some people might call it worship. Whoever it is that you are praying to or working with, and this doesn't necessarily always have to do with paganism, right? But it also could have to do with just like monotheistic religion and faiths, organized religion. You know, in deity work, you have things like incense and altars and candles and offerings, and in monotheistic religions, you have, you know, your things like rosaries and Bibles and things like that. Again, just like as I was saying before with the divination tools, certain things might be nice to have, right? But you absolutely don't need the material things that people make you think that you need. It's silly to assume that ancient beings care so much about material things that we tend to care so much about, right? Yes, there is always going to be an exchange. You know, the word sacrifice kind of comes to mind, or offering comes to mind. But it's the energy that you give, the faith that you have in them. These are offerings, these are sacrifice. When you make time to speak to whatever particular energy it is, right? Whether it be a deity, a god, or, you know, angels, infernals, whatever they may be, whenever you take the time to sit with them, to, you know, connect with them, right? When you are open to receiving their messages, these are all forms of sacrifice. You're taking time out of your day, time out of your energy. It's an energetic exchange at the end of the day. And if you're able to afford things like an altar, right? Statuettes and things, candles, whatever it may be, then yeah, of course, you know, make your devotion known to these physical means. But it is silly, and it's, I think, a little dangerous maybe even to assume that people who can't afford, who aren't privileged enough to be able to afford these things, that the deities would just ignore them, right? So what I always think and what I always feel is that give to the ability that you're able to give, right? Offer what you're able to offer. That's what they're called, offerings. And the same, you know, hopefully as you understand this, right? You can practice this with people in your life, right? So you're not overgiving. The same goes for like any sort of unseen energy, is that you don't want to overgive. You don't want to give more than you're able to give. Because then it doesn't really become, even if you feel really good doing it right, you go into debt, you know, buying all these trinkets and things and all these little offerings for your altar, let's say, right? It's not, you're taking away from yourself, and any and all loving energies would not jive too well with that. They wouldn't like that very much. So keep that in mind, you know. It's not just about this. It's not a one-sided sort of thing here where you just have to give and give and give, right? It has to be balanced as with any other connection in your life. Just because this connection is unseen, if you can feel it, it's there. So be mindful of that, right? You don't have to go beyond your means, and they don't want that. The most important offering you can give to any sort of energy is how you feel. It's not just limited to financial ability either. It's physical ability, right? Do you have the space for an altar? Are you able to show your connection or whatever to the outside world, right? And a lot of people at this point might say, you should be able to. Yes, I agree. You should be able to show your deity work or, your divination, whatever it may be, whatever spiritual work that you're doing. I use the term kind of loosely, whatever faith it is that you believe in, right? You should be able to show it to the world, but not everyone has that privilege. Not everyone has that flexibility. Sometimes all you have is your belief, your faith, that resides in your heart. And it's silly to assume that ancient beings care so much about physical things, physical material possessions, these offerings that we give, so much so that they would just ignore someone with faith in their heart. It's incredibly silly, and again, as I said before, even dangerous to assume that. Back in the day, people would just use sticks and stones to communicate and to connect. If it worked back then, it'll work now. Even if you don't have sticks and stones, just be open, right? Be open to whatever energy it is that you're trying to connect to. Be open to receiving the signs and the messages from them. And you don't need things to tell you what they're trying to say. You are the thing, you are the tool that is going to receive what you're asking for, the answers that you seek. You are the dowsing rod, so to speak. You don't need anything beyond yourself.